Hey, everybody, and welcome to Superhero Speak. I'm your host, Dave. And this week's rant's a little different because I haven't done one like this before necessarily. This is a kind of a response to a video Screen Crush had put out yesterday. In their video, Colton Allburn talked about Daredevil Born Again, the first two episodes that have dropped. So there will be spoilers if you have not seen Daredevil Born Again. You might not want to continue watching. Okay, so he said in the video that Foggy had to die for this for this Disney Plus Daredevil to be good. And I agree and disagree with that. And one of the main reasons I disagree is because of the reasoning he gave for why he had to die. He had multiple reasons, but first and foremost, he said Foggy's story was over and there was no need to keep exploring this character. And I thought that's complete BS. Like, he's the best friend. There's no reason to kill him. You can always keep him around for multiple stories. He also said that bringing them back was brilliant because it showed that the Netflix series, this is just a continuation of that same story. We're not starting over. I agree with that. Yes, that was good to bring them back, but to bring them back just to kill them, he said that was brilliant. I thought, no, that was dumb. And I'll get into it as we go along here. But I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions and discussing this as we go along here. So, what this has gotten me to is not only is it a response to that, it got me thinking about, is character death always good stakes in a story? There's all this talk about stories have to have stakes, and superhero stories have to have stakes, or you won't be invested in them. Then you don't like the characters. If you need something else to get you invested, I don't think you're as big a fan of the character as you think. It's funny because this comes up a lot on the show. Do superheroes have to have personal stakes in a story? And my canned answer usually is no, because the stakes are the world. They're saving the world, the city, their family, whatever. They're saving something else. That is the stake. So to sit there and say heroes don't die, so what's the point of watching the story? Because there's no stake in it for them. The stake is they're saving the world. There's no bigger stakes than that. So that's the canned answer. But I think exploring a little bit farther, no, maybe they do. So, like I said, let's get into this a little bit here and ask, are character deaths actually the stakes we think they are? So, here is why the death of Foggy in the beginning of Daredevil is brilliant. And it's not because Foggy's story wasn't is over. It's not because it's saying goodbye to the Netflix series and bringing in Disney Plus. The MCU version of Daredevil, like, it's a turning point, which is the other argument Colton was making in the video. No, this season especially, but the show has always been about good versus evil. We talked about this in the live show, reacted to the first two episodes, but it's always been about where is that line between good and evil. It's why bringing the Punisher in to Daredevil was brilliant, because he always crosses that line. What makes you a superhero versus a vigilante? And the show starts off with Bullseye is there going after someone that Foggy is protecting to find out where they are. Daredevil and Bullseye get into a big fight, one of their classic fight scenes in a stairwell, going up the stairwell, and Bullseye has shot Foggy at this point. He's laying in the street dying while they're fighting. They're on the roof, and of course, they show Matt Murdock. Daredevil can hear things with his super senses, and he hears Foggy's heart stop. And as soon as he hears Foggy's heart stop, it pushes him over the edge to push Bullseye over the edge. There's a lot of symbolism in the whole scene. It's beautifully done with the intent to kill Bullseye. He's crossing that line, right? And thus, that's the stakes. The stakes isn't that he has to save his friend, though that is the important part of it. It's the stake then becomes, oh, I've lost my thing that I didn't want to do, is cross that edge and line and kill someone. In that regards, that was the stakes for Matt Murdock. And after that, we find out quickly that he has hung up the horns, so to speak. It's 1 year later. He can't be Daredevil anymore in his mind because he crossed that line when his friend died. That's the brilliance of that death. That's why it works. I don't 100% agree with it, though. And we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, that was the stakes. His friend died and he moved on. And the stuff like that is prevalent in the comics. Uncle Ben is one of the few people who has stayed dead in comics. And it's because he's the origin point of Peter Parker Spider-Man. His death is the significant turning point. Great power comes great responsibility. Because his uncle died, he realizes the responsibility of being Spider-Man and thus becomes a hero. It's significant. That was a stake in young Peter's life that was important and forever is a foundation of the character. Yes, that's a stake that is important to the character, along with the death of Gwen Stacy. That was a major turning point in the comics because it was his love interest, and there was a whole they were going to go down a road and get married, and they didn't. And then they brought MJ in as there was a whole MJ versus Gwen in the comics, and they ended up killing off Gwen Stacy and making MJ the main love interest. But that's not the turning point. Again, it's something that haunted him to this day in the comics. And it's also one of the points I wanted to bring up is they did then bring Gwen Stacy back in the comics. I'm not talking Spider Gwen, but they did bring her back for a storyline, and it was terrible. It so ruined the death of Gwen Stacy. I'm sorry, it was more or less the kids, Gwen's kids. It's a whole crazy story that's been retconned in the comics since then. But they basically disrespected the memory of the character, and thus it ruined her death for a long time until they retconned it. And of course, Spider Gwen is an alternate universe, so it doesn't fall into this category of bringing her back. But yeah, like significant turning point in the character's life, just like the death of Karen Page, who was the character I thought they were going to kill in that beginning sequence because Karen Page does die in the comics. Guardian Devil, I believe, is the story, and it's a significant part of the Born Again storyline. And yeah, so that's like the whole thing. You think, oh, he's going to kill somebody, he's going to kill Karen. Because she's, again, one of those few characters that has the honor of still being dead in the comics. So yeah, like it's an important turning point in Daredevil's story. It's, again, a lot has affected the character from that point forward in the comics, just like Foggy's death affected Matt in this show. Yes, it can be significant stakes. It can change a character in a good or a bad way. And we need those kinds of stories every once in a while. But there are people who are saying Tony Stark needs to remain dead or there's no stakes in the MCU. That's something that viewers have said on this show a couple times. And no, no, because two reasons why. Number one, JD would say this all the time on the show, and I totally agree with it. Comics are a continual second act, just like soap operas. They there is no end. It's we have the origin, boom, real quick. Now we're second act forever. Third act is the end of the story. So killing Tony ends his story. Killing any character ends their story. Yeah, I know there's a whole art versus commerce argument here, but yeah, that's how it goes. People are attracted to superheroes because of the wish fulfillment aspect of the character. It makes you helps you feel powerful when you're powerless. When you read these stories about these people with these powers saving others and whatnot, and it makes you feel good. And to think that they can fail sometimes is good, but to think that they can possibly die, it ruins the wish fulfillment. That's why you can't kill the characters off. And when they do kill them off, they're normally stunts. The most brilliant example of killing off a hero as a stunt is, of course, Superman. He was the biggest example of this. They killed Superman off in the 90s, and it quickly became obvious that it was a stunt. Like they said, oh, he's not going to come back for a long time, and he was back within a year of the comics. It was all planned out from the beginning. they did it to sell books, right? And it makes it one of the, on one hand, a brilliant move because they did sell a lot of books, but it also made it stupid because it made it put that line in the sand that, yeah, superhero deaths are not permanent. And the other great example of this is the death of Captain America. Yeah, because you could sit there and say, oh, you can bring Superman back because he's an alien and he can regenerate and blah, blah, blah. But Captain America's just a human being with enhanced abilities, comic book steroids, as it were. And he was shot pretty much point blank in the comics and died. And here they retcon the story by saying it put him in stasis, and his body was looked like his body died, but his consciousness was somewhere else. It was a whole crazy story, but of course they brought him back because, again, it was a stunt. Originally, they were going to kill him off in Civil War. They moved it to his own book because they knew they wanted to sell that title. So they killed him off and then, of course, brought him back. So, yeah, like superhero deaths, the main character death shouldn't be permanent because whenever it's done, it feels like it's done as a stunt to sell books, sell movie tickets, get people to watch a show, whatever. When they do it to the supporting characters, it can be a turning point for the character that's a good thing in the long run or a bad thing depending on your view, but if it's done, it can be a good thing. That being said, sometimes it backfires, and I know I'm going to get flack for this. I know it before even the words come out of my mouth. I'm not a Game of Thrones fan. I watched the first season and I got invested in Ned Stark as, oh, this main character, family guy trying to keep politics balanced in his family and all this, and they end up, long story short, he dies at the end of the first book, he dies at the end of the first season of Game of Thrones, and I was out because the character I was invested in that I wanted to watch died. So to me, that was the end of the story. Killing off the main character, in my mind, backfired. And look, again, I'm going to get flack for this. Everyone I know that's a big fan of it, they always talk about how much sex, violence, and death are in the books. So it's all shock value stuff. There's no real story there. I'm sorry, there isn't. Game of Thrones doesn't have a real strong story. It's all shock value stuff. That is why I feel that George R. Martin has not finished the books yet because he knows there's not really a story there to finish. Sorry, it's my opinion. A good story, you're following a main character through the whole thing, you're invested in that character. So when you keep killing off people that are main characters, you're not invested. There's not a real story there. And it ended with book one, and he should have just stopped right there. So that's my opinion. Don't shoot me over it. Just, you know, Game of Thrones doesn't work because they killed off the main character in the first book. All right. Now, last bit on a side note, plot twist. Foggy might not be dead. So there is a current fan theory that I'm a fan of, and I'll explain why, that Foggy's actually going to end up being Muse in the show. This works on two levels. One, Muse, his true identity is never revealed in the comics. He's a character that was brought in, was a foil for Daredevil in the comics, but you never find out who he is in the books. And two, there is a theme of like resurrection in Born Again. I said in the beginning that Bullseye got knocked off of the building. It looked like he died, and then no, he wasn't dead. He woke up. So is there something that has kept him alive? Wilson Fisk was shot in the face, and I know they brought him back in Echo, but that is part of the theme too. A lot of people thought he was dead. He's back. So there's a theme of resurrection in this. Could there be some kind of mystical thing with the hand or something like that where people are coming back? And will they bring Foggy back to be Muse? Would that be Dirty Pool? Not possibly, but it could be an intriguing story. So we'll see. We'll see. I think I like the theory. I'm not 100% convinced they're doing that, but it'll be interesting. So again, it goes along with the theory or the rule that characters don't die. Superheroes don't die. Characters don't die. Death isn't permanent in comic books. Just true. So I've said a lot here. I've posed a lot of ideas and a lot of questions. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Is Foggy dead? Really dead? Or are they going to bring him back somehow? Is death always the stakes that we think they are in stories? And should superhero deaths be permanent? Let me know your thoughts on all of that stuff. And that's it. So, as usual, I'm going to say thanks for watching. And as always, don't let your cape get caught in the door. See you next time.
If you haven't done so yet, subscribe. It really keeps this podcast alive. Smash the like button if you please. It gives us what we need. Maybe leave a comment or two. It's a really nice thing to do. And what